Welcome to another episode of Discourse Lab. In this episode, we are joined by Lucy Biggers. Lucy is a journalist and content creator, and she currently serves as the head of social media for the Free Press. In her mid-20s, Lucy was a prominent climate activist whose efforts for outlets like Now This helped spread alarmist stories about global warming and highlighted the Standing Rock protests on a national stage. During COVID, Lucy began to seriously doubt the validity of the cause she was fighting for. She put her activism on hold and reassessed many of her beliefs about climate change. Last May, Lucy started posting on social media again, only this time it was to debunk many of the claims she had once fervently shared with the world. A Gallup poll from April 2025 shows that 48% of people now believe global warming is a serious threat. This follows a long-term increase from just 25% in 1997. Alongside these worries, many individuals, particularly young people, are overwhelmed with feelings of doom and anxiety when it comes to climate. But amid all the anxiety and clarion calls from politicians and activists warning of an impending disaster, Lucy remains optimistic, as you'll easily notice in her demeanor. Listen to this episode if you want to learn why Lucy isn't even remotely concerned about CO2 emissions. Find out what Greta Thunberg is like in person, and hear Lucy's impressions of a plant stoma, and much more. Lastly, if you enjoy what we're doing here on Discourse Lab, please consider leaving a comment on your streaming service of choice. This really goes a long way and helps us grow. So without further ado, Lucy Biggers. This is Discourse Lab.
MAGA in Trump 2.0 is a cultural phenomenon.
I'm Anthony Rispo.
And I am Clayton Smith.
Is this the moment where I let you know that I think your therapist is incompetent or inadequate for you?
On this podcast, you'll hear a wide range of perspectives from an ideologically diverse suite of guests.
Social psychologists will just seamlessly import leftist ideology.
It's quite a radical idea, actually, to say that we're going to deregulate banking and big government out of all of these spheres of life in which it was previously involved.
Our goal? To use conversation to analyze ideas, test arguments, and question dogmas.
Terrorist speech, extremist speech, disinformation, misinformation, all of these concepts are inherently irreducibly subjective.
Now, let's head into the lab. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, Lucy. It's a real pleasure. We've been trying to get it to happen for a long time now, so it's awesome to finally have you with us. I wanted to start off with something that Anthony and I both noticed that you've said in your videos and maybe some other interviews that I think is really will make a good hook for this episode. So let me ask you. You say often that in regard to the climate movement and to many solutions proposed by several different kinds of groups and people, that the cure is actually worse than the disease. So what do you mean by the cure is worse than the disease in this context?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. So when I say that, what I'm saying is that what the climate movement is proposing that we do in a rapid transition away from reliable fossil fuels, oil, coal, natural gas, that proposal to then replace them with solar and wind, which are unreliable and require a lot of land and require a huge import systems from China. My thesis is that to do that, to transition our reliable energy grid to this less reliable version that's dependent on China would actually be worse than just the impacts of climate change that we're seeing today. And the climate change that we are seeing is just mild warming, about 1.3 degrees of warming since 1850, which has coincided with, as we know, the most human flourishing the world has ever known. We've basically eradicated most poverty. Infant mortality rates are at all-time lows. Literacy rates are at all-time highs. And so this idea that this climate change boogeyman is destroying civilization, it just doesn't hold up to scrutiny. And I really do think that if the climate movement got its way, it would be way worse than just adapting to climate change with the technologies that we already have, which are reliable fossil fuels. And yeah, that's basically it. There's so many angles you can go into, but that's the basics.
We'll get into them for sure. So how do you go from, well, you had a transformation from climate activism. Yeah, exactly. We had a walkaway movement, a collective walkaway movement. Yeah, how do you go from climate activism to where you are now with that particular thesis? Because it's a drastic change.
Yeah, so I was a climate activist in my 20s, and I think as much as I was an activist really pushing this ideology, I truly did not really understand what I was pushing. I was really a part of groupthink. I worked in a very left-wing newsroom where everyone was just like Bernie people, even like to the left of Bernie. And I fell for a lot of the stereotypical leftist thinking that we've all talked about many times. I know you guys
Mhm.
talk about this on your show. And I think for me, the psychology of joining the climate movement was basically to join something, to feel like I was on the right side of history and that I was making a difference in the world. And so when I joined that movement, I had watched a few documentaries. I watched Inconvenient Truth in high school.
Yeah.
I watched Before the Flood by Leonardo DiCaprio, Gasland by Josh Fox. And I didn't know it at the time, but those documentaries are full of propaganda and misinformation. Just the connections that they draw, that New York City is going to be underwater, that, fracking is leading to gas coming out of people's sinks. All of this stuff was actually very inaccurate, but it was enough to motivate me to join the movement. And so that was enough. So the misinformation that got me in, and then the groupthink that kept me in, right? Just, I'm not going to question this because I'm part of this group. This is where I'm getting all these accolades. I'm getting followers. I'm gainfully employed. And I'm one of the good guys. And so even when I would see things that didn't quite make sense, I would never question them, because to question the movement would be for me to question my entire identity, my social standing, my social network. And anyone who was outside of the
Right.
group, in my eyes, were MAGA nuts, conspiracy theorists, fossil fuel shills, paid off. And so because my thinking was so like adolescent, I guess you could say, I stayed in it for many years. And then I guess living through COVID was enough for me to start to question the movement. And once I lived through COVID and saw the world shut down, our carbon emissions didn't really go down. And I'm thinking, okay, I want to go to net zero. And the pandemic only brought down our emissions over that year by about 5%. That was enough for me to go, hold on a minute. What does the climate movement actually want from us? Like, this is getting freaky. Like, I don't really want to be locked in my house. I don't want the government to have this much control. And so I started to read books, which maybe I should have done 5 years earlier. It's embarrassing.
No, I get it.
But I started
I've
to
been on
read
the same.
books.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I got it.
But movies are so much more fun, Lucy.
I know, and algorithms.
Yeah.
So I read Michael Shellenberger's Apocalypse Never, right when it came out, which I think was middle of 2020. I read that privately to myself. And then Steve Koonin, who is a former Obama appointee, wrote Unsettled in 2022. It came out. And both of those books cracked open my mind.
Mhm.
I let the light seep in. And then from that point on, I just kept researching, but I didn't necessarily speak out for 4 or 5 years after all of this, because the social risk was too high. So I just spoke out less than a year ago. May 20th of last year will have been my 1 year of going.
Wow. We're going to celebrate?
Mm.
Are you going to
I
celebrate?
am.
with
I've
some
already thought
champagne?
about the videos I'm going to make. I am. I like,
Oh, that's
well,
funny.
it depends. I need to accomplish a few things, but like I have a book deal. Which
Wow,
is like
congratulations.
Yeah.
We need a.
Yay. So I told Anthony, and I are pretty good friends, so I've told you over voice memos, but I have a book deal, which I'm very excited about, so I don't have to write the book. But I'm already planning the May 20th. I'm going to be like, a year ago today, like I posted for the first time. Now I have a book deal. Like, it could be you. Like, because I do think my story. No, but I
It's
like,
true.
I really feel passionate about this. It's not just about the climate. I think my story also connects with people because it's about changing your mind in the era of social
Yes.
media and groupthink. And
Yes.
it's about finding your truth, which in my case is the truth. Sorry. I crack myself up.
We're giggling too. It's okay.
But I think also like my story can be so it can be a lesson for everyone, right? Like that it is so scary to go against the grain and go against the group think. But on the other side of it is freedom, is book deals. So May 20th, get ready.
So can you tell us
That's
anything
awesome.
more about the book yet, or is it still that's still
I
under
can.
wraps?
So basically I did a few clips back in the summer, at the end of the summer, about calming your climate anxiety. And that was when a book agent reached out to me. So I was able to get a book agent. She's amazing. And she was like, is there a book here? And weirdly, like the week before, I'd had an idea for a book. Like it had fallen out of my mind. Like it had fallen into my mind. And so I was like, I think I do. And she's like, we need to like write a few chapters. I was like, oh, I can just like give you an outline. No, I'm just kidding.
Wow. Yeah.
So I
Just
wrote like a book proposal
chapters.
with like,
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, you need to be like, write the book to get a book deal. So I haven't written much. I've written like, I don't know, like 30 pages or something.
No. Well,
But anyway, so what's so exciting is the same publisher who published Steve Koonin's book, Unsettled, Ben Bella, is my publisher.
Very
So I'm
cool.
really, really happy because it's a really nice match and they support me and contrarian science is their sort of wheelhouse. And so I'm pumped. So it'll come out next year. I need to write it.
congratulations.
Yeah, that's the thing
really.
is, it's congratulations. That is super cool. And it's just, I sympathize with you. I've always said like, maybe I'll write a book one day, but then I
Right.
realized I just want to have written a book, like not actually write
I
a
know.
book, you know?
It's been
Yep.
such an interesting like creative process and like almost a spiritual experience because I feel like I have to surrender to something like bigger than myself. And you have to have so much confidence in your voice. Like you just have to be like, I'm writing and this is really good. Like you can't be like, is this bad? Like you just because I always actually hated writing. And so it's really crazy that this has become on my like plan for
Isn't
the
that
next year because
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Like how you I was awful at math, but I love statistics. It's
Yeah.
so wild. I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's so strange.
it's so
But
interesting,
you're
but I
doing
think
it
it
now.
goes
Yeah.
well because I think also went back when I was in that groupthink mindset, I didn't have a voice. Like my
Mhm.
voice was all taken from the group. And so I remember I would be off balance and have anxiety and be triggered by, just comments like
Right.
people
right.
saying, hey, this is coming off as privileged or insert critique here, right? Like you can picture them. And so when I was part of the climate movement, I never could put pen to paper, even when I was growing my following, which was more like video and photos and such, because I didn't know what I believed. There was like a disconnect because I got all of my confirmation from the group. And now I get my confirmation from the facts of the matter and the research I've done and my own internal sense of self.
So this is interesting. This brings up something, a couple questions I was curious about in terms of your personal journey, because I think it's applicable to a lot of other people. And the first thing is it seems like you're describing yourself as a bit of a blank slate going into this. And I'm wondering, like, at the time we wouldn't have called it this, I don't think, but where did your wokeness sort of come from? Do you think you
Yeah.
got into the climate movement and it sort of developed there? Or do you think there was an inkling before that? That kind of got exploited in a sense by
Right.
this pattern of thinking, if that makes sense.
No, I think it's such a good question. And I think it's just a combination of timing. I think the social media aspect cannot be understated. I was at this newsroom, and the newsroom where I worked was very, very left wing. Like, really what we see now, and you guys are very familiar with it, just like the white privilege stuff, oppressor versus oppressed ideology.
Yeah. Right.
The global South is being oppressed by the North. Western imperialism, every white man is racist. Like all
It's
of
true.
that. Well, that's true. But all the social,
That's obviously
all
true.
this, the social, it was like cultural Marxism essentially was what
Right.
permeated my newsroom. And I mean, I was not inoculated against this idea as a young person coming out of our education system. So I grew up loving America. I have family that was fought in the Revolutionary War. I have family that was on the Mayflower. Like I'm kind of like a WASP.
So you're
So-
what they would call a heritage American. Yeah.
I am. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
No, that is bullshit. But
Okay.
yeah. But yeah.
I mean, I've never called myself that, but
A default white supremacist. No, I'm saying.
no,
Yeah.
literally. Like, so then all of these things that like my sense of pride in myself, right, was subverted by this movement, and it became all these things I should be so proud of. Like my great grandfather worked for FDR. Like he
Wow.
was in his cabinet. Very cool. I sound really
Wow,
richer
okay.
than I am, by the way, guys. I don't have a trust fund. I feel like I'm sounding
That's-
very like posh, but I am Connecticut. It's like everything you're thinking, but without all of the trust fund.
You are
but anyways,
wearing a very Connecticut sweater for our listeners.
I am
right
very
now.
Connecticut coded.
Yeah.
I pride myself on that. I've reclaimed my identity. But anyway, so going into this newsroom in my 20s, and it was the sort of the height of the Tumblrification of our politics, where all of a sudden we're questioning gender, we're questioning the white man, and I'm looking around this room and I'm going, hold on, I'm a heritage American white girl, and I'm an oppressor by the nature of my birth, right? And it doesn't matter that MLK said, we're going to judge people not by the content of their caricature, by the color of their skin, right? That stuff is thrown out the window, and you need to sit down and you really need to listen and give voice to the minorities in the room. And I will say, there are seeds of truth that is important. I think we should have a diversity of opinions and voices. And I think historically, minority voices were not represented and all that. So it was a seed of truth there, but it was taken to a very dark conclusion. And the same thing with the Me Too movement. It's yeah, we shouldn't have guys slapping women's asses in the office. I agree. But then it went to all men are evil. So
Yeah.
So anyway, so I think that's why
exactly.
I fell for it. Yeah, because I think I fell for it because I was looking around. I'm such a do-gooder. I'm very emotionally intelligent, and I'm getting my cues from the group. Throw kerosene on the fire, which is social media. So you're seeing what everything's going viral and what people are sharing. And then you have Slack. Our newsroom Slack was where a lot of the programming happened, unintentionally, by the way, unbeknownst to anyone. This was happening where you would just see the conversations, and a lot of the staff were younger than me. They're more Tumblr-y than me. And then they're just saying of course we're on board with the transification of X, Y, and Z. And of course every white male is a racist. And I'm just sort of sitting in Slack going okay, guess that's what we believe now.
Yeah.
I don't know. And
That's
and
what
again,
they keep telling me anyway.
Yeah. And then and at that time, I would again, my sense of self, my inner voice was so quiet. And so I'm if this is what I have to believe to fit in with the group, I'm going to, because the cost of going against the group, and sometimes I would even push back in certain circumstances where I thought people were being ridiculous, but then I would feel very attacked and maligned. There are moments on Slack where I would get pushed down, right? And then I'm looking around and going, I'm the white girl with the privilege on my head. I am wearing the P letter. And so I have to just sit down and be quiet. And so anyway, this is a long way to say the climate movement, to my psychology, was a way to really prove that I was an ally. And so I could atone for my ancestors, right? My ancestors colonized America. Well, this Native American population wants to fight this pipeline. I'm going to help fight this because now I'm atoning. Look I'm a good guy. I'm on the right side of history. My ancestors did this, but I'm doing this. And then sprinkle in the misinformation. I thought fossil fuels were an outdated technology. Who needs this anymore? Why are these greedy fossil fuel companies, defaming, despoiling the land of these Native Americans? This is such corporate capitalistic greed. And so I just fell right into all of that. It's the omni cause, essentially, and I was just a perfect pawn for it.
A conspiracy. And of course, this is all moderated by the fact that you had leaders like AOC, for instance, Greta Thunberg or Thunberg, or however you pronounce. Yeah.
I know.
So what was that like? I mean, because you were kind of close-ish with AOC, and then you met Greta also. So I mean, these are big voices in the fold. So that must have
tell
been...
us what Greta was really like in person.
I know.
I'm dying to know.
It's so funny because I felt she was sweet, but monotone. She'd be yes. And also she was very media trained. So she was showing up, doing multiple takes of biking her bike into the square. 60 Minutes Australia was there. Other outlets were there. It was all very orchestrated. So this girl knows exactly what she's doing. She's a press team. But I mean, that's what happens when something like this goes viral. It's not by accident. Obviously the team built up around her because she got so much attention on her cause. But the combination of English is her second language. She's younger. She's on the autistic spectrum. She's not exactly cracking jokes. I feel I was trying to get a smile out of her, and you're not really gonna get that. But she was perfectly fine. I don't have any AOC and also Greta, and then also AOC. I really have only had lovely interactions with AOC in real life. And she, to me, just came off as she cared a lot. She's very charismatic, obviously very attractive, and like had a aura about her. And she was sort of poorly educated, obviously, to join the socialism DSA stuff. And then she got put up to run. And I think because she's such a charismatic speaker, she ran. And I think she's not allowed to evolve in the way that like I've evolved because she's got elected on those platforms.
She's built a brand that's like kind of hard to escape.
It's codified into her
yes,
personhood.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think she could even question it, because talk about like the social risk of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, tell me about it. She's in for the long haul.
Speaking of that social risk, I mean, you're not AOC, but I'm sure it was hard for you as well, right? Like, so take us through this journey of yours, like both in terms of how it affected your life kind of exteriorly, your life kind of around you, but also the internal state of what it was like to have been so dogmatically in favor of this kind of worldview and then to slowly get out of it. I mean, reading Michael Shellenberger and that's like a whole different thing. I don't know if you know this, but he's not popular in those circles.
I know. I secretly read it and I ate it up. I ate it up. I was like,
I did too, by the way.
Best. I know. And it's weird because like, I just, when you get exposed to something, my mind getting exposed to like good information, it was like I ferociously ate it up because I was reading like Uninhabitable Earth and like all these like really depressing, or like Naomi Klein, like The World's on Fire, and I was like, like I can't read this. Yeah, I mean, I think the way that I describe my internal world was a lot of cognitive dissonance and overwhelm and a lot of anxiety. My internal like words in my mouth, like words in my head, intrusive thoughts, a lot of intrusive thoughts. Like I felt very like I was in confusion inside my internal world, and it felt very like not balanced. I felt like I was kind of going with the wind. I was always seeking external validation, and that's how I felt when I was in the movement. It was like an overwhelm.
Yeah.
And I would have moments of relief if like a video goes viral or something like that. But like my baseline was a lot more anxiety. Like I would have anxiety like on my honeymoon, because it was like there was a climate march happening that like I wasn't at, and I felt guilty for flying to my honeymoon. Like, so a lot of internal anxiety. And then in regards to thinking about the backlash, I mean, that was something that really kept me silent for so long. Because I was like, oh my God, if I speak out, think about all the arrows that are going to be coming my way. And I'm going to have to be able to stand up like strong on my own 2 feet against that. And that is really hard. so that was a big part of just not, speaking out for so long, because I knew like I couldn't lean on anyone really but myself. Like I would have to, if I knew if someone was like coming at me, I would have to be ready to like react or let it just bounce off of me.
You said in other interviews, I think I was just watching the one you did with, is it Maya Solkin at the Free Press?
Yeah.
It came out a couple weeks ago. That was a great interview, by the way. I recommend it to everyone listening. But you said something that was really interesting, is that you got your sense of self from this movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious, like, what it was like leaving this thing that provided you with your sense of self, and then where do you get your sense of self now? Like you must get it from a different place now, obviously. And what is that? So what is the source of that now?
Yeah. So I think my first phase of leaving the group was in 2021 when I left my job at Now This, and then I went silent for 5 years for 5 years before I spoke out now a year ago almost. So I kind of first distanced myself and kind of went through a cocoon phase where I was like, I was a climate activist. I'm not part of that movement anymore. I'm not really burning a bridge, but I'm not talking about it. That was like my transition phase. I also had 2 kids in that time. So like I was worrying about other things kind of. So that was kind of like elongated phase. And then now, I mean, this is going to sound really cliche, but I feel like I get my sense of self from God. I don't know. Like I just feel like I try to transcend the noise of the world and try to find that inner knowing of myself. Like, who is my soul? I was born here. I came here to do something, right? And I'm thinking about what was my soul plans for my life before I was born.
Mm.
And that allows me to have like a mission greater than like the earthly, like, getting all the approvals from the group and what's the fashionable thing today. Like, you can't do what I'm doing and not have to have some sort of higher calling other than yourself. And so for me, I think the piece that was missing when I was in the climate movement, I think this is a very common experience for people, is that I didn't believe in God. And so I believe the climate movement became my religion.
Mm.
And now I feel like I believe in God, so that allows me to orient toward that versus orienting toward like an earthly movement, which even saying this stuff, it feels awkward a little bit for me to say it because I'm not an evangelical. I wasn't raised very like faith. I was raised culturally Christian, but not like having a lot of faith, I guess. So I know sometimes that might sound weird to people, but yeah.
Yeah, this
Huh.
is
That
amazing.
answers your
This is
question.
a psychological integration of a cohering of self, similar to what so many have experienced, and myself included. It's like at one point you're engaging in activities to obtain like separable outcomes that are outside of congruity, like not things that you're congruent with, things you believe in, just are following for social reward to be accepted. And then when we're put up against the challenge of being in a space or a room where people are acting punitively, using a sort of like proverbial catechism with which to reprimand people if they fall out of line, we self-correct. And there's actually a psychological theory, self-determination theory, broken down to intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. And what we experienced was an extrinsic
Right.
motivation, and it's in gradation, it's in levels. I mean, what you've done is it's an external regulation mechanism where basically your behavior is performed to save your social status and to not get punished. And so then you come up against some dissonance with Michael Shellenberger and other works showing you
Right.
there's something else here to see. And so that dissonance is alarming. And now comes the integration process. So now I'm curious, like now we're at this point where now you're starting to integrate, crystallize, coming to this so-called feeling of God, a coherence of self, perhaps. So now where did that land you? Now, you said a year ago you came online. Now we're going to talk about the science. Like when you came up against the science that pushed the other
Yeah.
narrative, like what was the first thing that you found that was like, holy crap, I need to talk about this like publicly?
Oh my
With
gosh,
science.
there were so many things.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that I guess would break through, which is from another guy that I really like, is Alex Epstein, who always is repeating the fact that deaths from natural disasters are down 99% over the past 100 years.
Mm.
And that was when I was like, wait a minute, climate change is saying the climate movement saying this is so existential and so dangerous. But the deaths from storms are down. And it's not because climate change isn't happening. It's because we have evolved to be adaptable. We're a very adaptable species. So that was one thing. Also, just weirdly, and I don't talk about this a lot in other interviews, but the climate movement really vilified meat. They vilified the cow. And they said, okay, we can't have cows. There's methane released from their farts. So what we need to do is cull the cows, create industry-made cows in a factory, use, monoculture corn and soy to do lab-grown meat. And I'm like, wait a minute. You have over here this perfect thing in the form of cow, which upcycles grass into meat that nourishes us. It's truly like the perfect thing. And the climate movement is saying, no, we don't want that, which also like going back to the religious things, it's like this God-made perfect thing. And it's like, no, we don't want to do that. We want to do it in a lab, and all of the baseline material now is going to be monoculture, GMO corn and soy, which are the most toxic things you can grow. So that was another thing where I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like I learned about regenerative agriculture, and I was like, wait, I actually like this idea of grazing in a certain way to sequester carbon. So that was I was toying with that stuff even when I was still in the climate movement, but I wasn't quite ready to be like, the climate movement is bunk. Like I think it was a slow evolution. And then you start to read like Unsettled, Steve Koonin, which came out 2022. And he's an Obama appointee at the Department of Energy. And his story is so interesting because basically like he went to go research how bad is this climate thing essentially. And he was like, wait, it's not bad. Like, it was like, give me a report. Give it to me straight. Like, how bad is it? And he's like, oh. And so even when you look at these reports, like from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, they cannot find an increase in hurricanes, droughts, flooding, like all the things that we associate with climate change. And every time these events happen on the news, they'll say, oh, made worse by climate change. But even the IPCC, which is a biased organization looking for extreme weather to have increased, like they want to find it so bad. But even in their research, they say they have not found it, but then the way that they'll like summarize their work is they'll like lean on it and be like, well, we have a medium confidence that maybe we found it, but then like you go and actually look at what they have found and there's no increase. So I think the lack of extreme weather increasing and the deaths from natural disasters combined, I'm like, this isn't existential. It's not existential.
So what you're saying is you left the climate movement because you wanted to eat steak.
Yeah.
That's
Literally,
pretty
I
much
love
it, right?
hamburgers.
Yeah.
I
do
was like,
too.
I'm
It's
not
okay.
giving up my burgers.
I'm not giving up a ribeye ever. I will drown in a flood.
I love
before
steak. That's actually
it's-
such a good point. Maybe
It's
that was
so good. Yeah.
maybe subconsciously that's what it was.
I
No,
will
of course I'm
drown in a
kidding. Kind
flood.
of. I mean, you know, you had you had a lot of good reasons to leave, or to change your perspective, I should say. But so you come into contact with this science. You're coming into contact with some things you don't agree with. It sets you down this path. And now, since then, you've done quite a bit of research and you're releasing all these videos and doing all these interviews, and sort of spreading the word. And so I'm wanting to get into the part of the interview where we actually ask you about the hard science that you have found.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really interesting. And I think we should start broadly with this concept of, and I think you touched on it, I think, a little bit before, but this concept of fossil fuels being the gateway to wealth and prosperity. And there's actually, I mean, this is a quantifiable thing. You know, this isn't just some abstract concept where energy equals wealth. And so I'm wondering what you found in that domain that really kind of opened your eyes, if we could start there.
Yeah, 100%. So Alex Epstein, again, who wrote Moral Case for Fossil Fuels, which is a quick read if anyone wants to check it out. Fossil Future, which is a little bit longer, but both of those books go into how basically we can't live without fossil fuels. There's no replacement for them. And there's another really great book is Factfullness by Hans Rosling. He's a statistician and he's traveled the world. And he also talks about how just the gas stove, right? Like the propane gas stove can transform someone's life from living on $1 a day to $2 a day. And it can allow them to have their kids go to school because once you have a gas stove, your 5-year-old is no longer collecting wood all day for you to burn your on your stove to cook your food. It's that fundamental for, I think, 600 million people still in the world, if not more. It might be 1 billion. And so places like sub-Saharan Africa, parts of Asia, this is like rudimentary, overnight change your life. And also just for us here in America, if you think about all this prosperity that we've had in the past 150 years, going back to industrialization and the invention of the steam engine, that was kind of the moment where everything changed because coal, oil, and natural gas are so abundant and affordable that they've allowed us to outsource our machinery. So before, you know, most people worked in the fields tilling land themselves, right? And then you got a horse and a mule that would do it. And then that's why you have like horsepower is like the power of an engine of a car because it's based off of the power of a horse, which is just an interesting fact. But then once you get the horse, then now we have combine tractors, right? That can do 40 rows of corn at a time and they run on diesel. And so the smelting of the steel that goes into that tractor, you need the oil and gas and coal refineries, or power from those things to run that process as well. So like truly every single thing, you could talk about plastics, all made from fossil fuels. Fertilizer, so like the nitrogen fertilizer that caused the green revolution, which has allowed us to have a surplus of food on the planet using 1/3 of the amount of land. all comes from fossil fuels. And what's so cool about that is there are problems with like pesticides and fertilizer overuse. Like I know Maha movement talks about that. But what's so cool about this green revolution is that our plants now are so abundant and efficient that we use less land today to feed way more people than we did in the past. So when you don't have that land in farm utilization, it can become other things, right? It can go back to being fields, or you can maybe turn it into tree forestry, or it can become a suburb, whatever it is. So we can't understate in our modern lives how fossil fuels really have underpinned everything we take for granted, especially for women, right? Just like the machinery power of I've got a load of laundry running right now. I'm not worrying about powering all this electricity in my house. I turn on the TV for my kids so I can cook. Like, no, we didn't have any of this stuff. And I think we fall into this modern trap of glamorizing the past. But there's nothing to glamorize. Also, this just came to my mind, is like, before we had fossil fuel labor, we had slave labor. So I don't know what to tell you. Like, truly, like it's just that cheap and abundant that humans, like a huge amount of population of people, used to just be in like the worst, most miserable laborious jobs. And fossil fuels has freed us to do that.
Yeah, well, because they're a source of energy has freed us to do that. And like you said, fossil fuels are a cheap and abundant, relatively cheap and abundant source of a large amounts of energy. Right.
They're energy dense.
Yeah.
They're very energy dense. If you think about it, it's so crazy. And I wish I could tell you the stats off the top of my mind, where it's like 1,000 to 1 or whatever. But it's like, if you think of it, I'm going to butcher this, but say it's like wood is like 1 to 1, right? Like one piece of wood for like 1 kilowatt hour. And then I'm making up these numbers, but equivalency, it's like fossil fuels is like 1,000 to 1.
Right. It's
right?
several
so
orders of magnitude.
Space.
Several orders of magnitude more. Yeah.
Right, exactly. No, it's not even, it's like several. Yeah, I think it's in like the hundreds or thousands. But it's like, if you think about like energy density, it's like a bucket. And like, how much wood can you fit in a bucket? And how much power would you get from that bucket of wood? And now think about if you filled a bucket with oil and how much power you could get from that bucket of oil, right? You could like power your car for 3 weeks by filling up your car with gas. You're not powering your car for really long with 3 logs of wood.
Right. Right. But, but Lucy, I can hear maybe some of our listeners thinking to themselves, that's all well and good, but it doesn't matter if the world is going to be consumed by a giant flood or burned down and we're all going to die in a wildfire. Because aren't these fossil fuels also dumping all of this CO2 in our atmosphere and causing this greenhouse effect that's going to kill us all, a la Jake Gyllenhaal and Dennis Quaid and Day After Tomorrow, right? Like, are we going to be like closing doors to get away from like the cold that's chasing us?
But we'll be warm while we do it. No, I'm just kidding. So, okay. I agree. I used to have this same idea. I had like this apocalyptic sort of vague thinking about this, right? I felt bad every time there was a car drove by and there's exhaust coming out of the pipe. I'm like, oh, I'm scared. So I'll just give you some statistics and you can do with it what you want. So right now in our atmosphere, CO2 is 0.04% of our atmosphere. Before we started burning fossil fuels, it was we're 0.042 right now. And before we started burning fossil fuels, it was 0.028. So we've little less than doubled the amount of CO2, but again, it's a really small amount. Another way of putting it is parts per million. So it's 420 parts per million. And to give you perspective, I'm exhaling 40,000 parts per million right now of CO2.
So you're contributing to climate change.
I am contributing to climate change. And I think we need to call all the humans.
Yeah.
And also, it's really interesting. So CO2... greenhouse growers, where they grow, plants in greenhouses and you can grow year round, they will increase our CO2 from the 420 that's naturally occurring up to 1,500 ppm. So I like these statistics because it makes it proportional, right? You're not really, like you said, like it's flooding the atmosphere with all this CO2. And you're like, no, it's actually still a trace gas. We exhale it. So yes, people are like, well, you wouldn't want to put your mouth to like an exhaust pipe. It's like, yes, of course, you would not want to do that. Please don't do that. However, we exhale it. So it's not a pollutant in the way that like lead or mercury or sulfur dioxide, all these things that we have cleaned up in the past, 80 years, we did clean up our air a lot. CO2 is a naturally occurring thing. Plants use it for plants use it for photosynthesis. And then you said sea level rise. So the sea level will always change depending on when there's an ice age. I know sea was much lower because we had these huge glaciers. We've been in this warming period that we've talked about. We always talk about going back to 1600 was when we were kind of at a low point, and we've been going up since then. So we have seen some mild sea level rise since that time. And I really need to do my deep dive and like read my book on sea level rise. But the thing I see thrown around is like less than a foot of sea level rise over a decade is like the most aggressive prediction. So again, like a foot of sea level over not decade. I'm sorry. A foot over a century.
Okay.
A foot over a decade.
I was going to say over a decade
Sorry.
actually does sound kind of.
No, that's scary.
Yeah.
No, sorry. Okay, so
like
from my
alarming, but
understanding, I need to really get it. Yeah, you're like, wait, Lucy. We have 10 years. Sorry. From my understanding, you can cut that past part out. I'll say it again. If you want to keep it in or out.
Keep it in because it's funny.
Okay. So, but basically, sorry, guys. Over the next century, we'll maybe see a foot of sea level rise. It's like an inch a decade is like a very aggressive measurement. And like, I need to do my deep dive on this, but I think there's even new research showing that it's not even going that fast. Like people have like been like, it's speeding up, the sea level speeding up. And then they like had this conjecture. And then like they realized that the study that they had all these measurements was like, they weren't taking into account that land also sinks. So it's not that sea is always rising. It's that also places where these measurements were, they could just be subsiding because it's a natural part of like land. So anyway, when you go through each thing, you start to realize that like they're not the fear mongering that the media pushes. Also, another thing is wildfires. So globally, wildfire area is down 25%, which I love. Like that sounds really positive. And again, it's because we are developing around the world. So we're putting out fires where before like they would either maybe slash and burn woods to like put in new crops, or they were lower income. So they're like, using that wood to cook on their stoves. And so again, as we see this economic development, you actually see wood forests more likely to be protected. Essentially here and in Europe and in America, which are very developed, we have the same amount of wood cover here that we did 100 years ago. And we have like,
really,
how many more people?
That's incredible, actually.
Yeah, it is really cool. It's really cool to think about, but it makes sense if you think about it for a second, because think about how much we've moved away from paper in general as a civilization. Like we all have iPhones. We're not printing out things. Like we've dematerialized in the paper front. And also we have responsible forestry that basically they replant everything. Like when we know how to farm forests essentially, and we've known how to do this for about like 300 years. So yeah, I just think it's happening, but it's not frightening. And I think it's manageable. And another really cool statistics I really like is the fact that 100 million people right now live below sea level in places like New Orleans and the Netherlands, because they evolved next to the water, maybe on marshy lands in the Netherlands. Like they filled in marshes and stuff that were kind of already below sea level. And so they built dikes, levees, seawalls, and like the Netherlands has been doing this stuff for centuries. So they have parts of their country that are actually under sea level because of just where they built in low-lying regions plus some minor sea level rise. And then, the New York Times will be like 150 million people will be underwater by 2050. They don't talk about the fact that 100 million already are. And so there you go.
Framing,
right? Like, so I guess we've talked
framing.
about this, Anthony. Yeah. It's like, there's such a lopsidedness in how this topic is covered by our media, where it so pushes fear that when I just try to bring in context and more information, I'm labeled the climate denier or I'm a fossil fuel shill, yada, yada, because the media is so irresponsible in pushing the fear narrative.
Well, yeah. And let's click on that, because two things I think about the California fires recently and how people will attribute that to climate change, but then you take into account the other variables, which is lack of preparedness.
Arson started it.
And arson started it, exactly. So the framing, and then you take CO2 as being in that omnibus sort of like put into this composite caricature of CO2 being labeled, kind of like maybe not overtly labeled a pollutant, but you make a good claim that, or an interesting claim that I guess implicitly, but you've said it on your videos explicitly, but I'm saying it more, that people kind of think of CO2 to some degree as like a pollutant. And
Right.
it seems like things like you mentioned in one of your videos, the endangerment finding in 2009, perhaps having some, I don't know, do you think that has plays a part in CO2 becoming a boogeyman over the years?
I think it's the propaganda going back to Inconvenient Truth and Al Gore and the way that he described it in the film, where he like had some animation and like the CO2 was coming in like a gangster and like beating up sunbeams. It was very weird. But I actually want to go back to the wildfire thing that you said for a second, because I think this is why this is so destructive. Because what happened with the wildfires in Palisades was government mismanagement and bureaucratic ineptitude to its core. Unfortunately, climate change is the perfect scapegoat, because now you have Newsom and Karen Bass who shit the bed. Can we swear?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I'm gonna start.
Bring out
And
the
get
big
ready.
time.
Get fucking ready, guys. Okay. But they come on the screen and Newsom's like, climate change, it's getting bad out there. Climate change, and it's really frustrating, and actually, it's really destructive. Because that is something that could have been prevented with policies that we have today. We had them yesterday. Forest management, all these wildfires that always end up starting on this and ruining these communities in California. It's usually because there's public lands nearby where, because of environmentalists, they don't log these public lands anymore. They don't manage them whatsoever. And because they want to protect them and keep them untouched. And so when there is a fire, there's this huge fuel load of uncleared brush, and all this stuff just goes up in a flame, and then the wind goes the wrong way, and then you don't have the water in the reservoirs. And so it becomes really bad, because the climate, the activist politicians essentially can wipe their hands of their mismanagement and say it's climate change. And also, you're going to see this now, mark my words, with AI fear mongering, and how everyone's like, my energy bills are going up because of this AI. And I'm like, I'm sorry, the AI data centers that are being built, like maybe there'll be more down the road, but like they didn't just like get built overnight. There's like many that are being proposed, but your electricity is not going up because of AI. Your electricity is going up because of really bad green energy policies. And then, but they go, it's because your bills are going up. It's because of all that extreme weather. And it's like, no. It's because you guys are putting unreliable solar and wind on the grid. You're taxing people for using fossil fuels. You're punishing us. You're passing all these laws that are driving the price of all of our energy up. And then you get to wipe your hands of it and go, it's because extreme weather is getting worse, and it's because of climate change. And so it's really, it's such a good propaganda machine, because it's like a get out of jail free. And to finish my rant on this, California, which is the worst in this U.S., on the border between California and Arizona, you have one gas station. They're 2 seconds away from each other. Gas is over $5 a gallon in California, and it's $2.15 in Arizona. That's not because of the greedy oil companies and because of climate change. That's obviously because of the laws that were passed in California.
Right.
But the average unassuming person, and the voter who wants to be the good person, votes blue no matter who, hates Trump, believes in climate change, thinks solar and wind can get us out of this problem. They're just hearing, I'm going to green the electrical grid. And they're like, great, you've got my vote. Right. And then.
Right.
Spot on impersonation. That was great. Great impression.
Right. Yeah. It's the caricature right in my head. Yep. Boom.
Yeah.
But what of this, like endangerment finding? You made a video. Yeah, I'm curious about that. I actually didn't really know anything about that. You mentioned it in a video in response to a woman talking about it. And it's interesting.
I know. Yeah, so it's interesting. So the endangerment finding happened during the Obama administration, and I was an Obama voter. And it's funny, now looking back, I think Obama did a lot of really irresponsible things when it came to climate change, and he codified a lot of things that were really huge overreach. And basically, the American people never voted for this. But because of this climate change boogeyman, he took a lot of leeway in the name of saving the world, I guess, to expand government power. So like in the case of the endangerment finding, basically what the EPA did is they, under this endangerment finding, said that carbon emissions were an endangerment to us in the way that a pollutant is, in the same way that sulfur dioxide and lead and all these other pollutants are, that were covered under the Clean Air Act of 1964. And so the endangerment finding allowed the government to regulate CO2 in the way that it regulated these other pollutants under this Clean Air Act, because basically it connected the dot, I guess.
Yeah.
And so even at the time, everyone was like, this is so irresponsible, and a lot of people who are common sense knew it was overreach. And one of the Substackers I really like, who's a scientist, is Matthew Walecki, Wieleki, and he has a Substack, Irrational Fear, and he's done a lot of good writing on how this endangerment finding was overreach, and the science doesn't back up that CO2 is dangerous to us at all, at the levels that it's at, and it won't be anytime soon. So.
All right, we'll definitely link, by the way, that Substack, Matthew Walecki, and then all the books you've been mentioning too.
Yeah, good.
In our show notes, just so our listeners, they already know that we do that. We shill books on this podcast. But I mean, so obviously CO2 is not a direct pollutant like
Right.
like lead is. We used to put lead in gasoline. That was bad.
Right.
I used to sniff it. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I mean, I put my mouth up to the exhaust pipe on cars, so it is a pollutant to me.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
I'm kidding, listeners. Listeners, I'm kidding.
Listen, I like to get a
I
little
know there's
high
someone out
on
there.
the CO2
Yeah,
fumes
yeah.
from my Honda. No. So it's not a pollutant in that sense, but I imagine the logic was it's a pollutant because it's going to cause global warming, and that's going to blah, 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 which is a bit of a stretch.
Right.
So this gets not what is the word I'm looking for? Not overturned, but yeah, overturned basically recently. What are the climate activists saying about this? What is their defense of keeping it on the books?
I think what you said, they're like, it is dangerous because it's impacting the climate and making us more dangerous. But I keep always being like, show me the problem.
Mhm.
Show me the problem. I don't understand, you guys. Like, it's just like, they're like, it's hurting millions of people. And I'm like, where? Where it's lifting people out of poverty? Like, where it's made us
Right,
richer than
yeah.
ever? Where the leading cause of death for women and children in Africa is inhaling smoke from their internal fires because they have to cook with wood and dung, and every time you switch to gas stoves you save lives. Where is it? It's not only maybe harming us a little, it's actually doing the opposite. And also I debunked this video from like Protect Our Winters, which is a very biased Instagram account, and this girl was like,
Char Winters.
Protect Our Winters, she goes, the EPA just reversed the endangerment finding, which is the rule that says pollution is dangerous. And
That's
I'm
what
like,
I was
ma'am.
talking about. That video
I'm
is
like,
that's what I was
you
talking
left out carbon pollution. Like, you just said pollution is dangerous. It's like, okay, yeah, we all agree pollution is dangerous, but you left out like a really important, and then I'm the one who gets flagged as a misinformation. I'm like so offended.
Right.
And that is really important because offense is violence, and we all know that. But seriously, I do want to like, so obviously seeing it as a pollutant like lead is wrong. And obviously, like the extremity of what these climate activists are saying is just that. It's extreme.
Yeah.
It's way over the top. But there does seem, at least possibly, at the very least, I'm sure you would admit, like that there is an effect on the climate from releasing CO2 into the atmosphere. Maybe it's a lot smaller, to the point maybe even where it's negligible, but we also might want to say, it's probably better if we don't release more CO2. And so we want to maybe switch to clean energy. And I'm wondering if in your research you found good sources of clean energy, like ways we actually can reasonably reduce our carbon footprint without also reducing all of the benefits that you talk about from having abundant energy.
So this is where you're going to be like, okay, Lucy, I don't think that more CO2 is inherently bad because we're like I said, remember, we're at 280 parts per million of CO2 before the Industrial Revolution, and now we're at 420 ppm, and below about 150 ppm, photosynthesis and life on Earth ends because plants don't have enough carbon in the air to produce photosynthesis. So remember that I was also saying greenhouse growers, they're putting up to 1500 ppm into their greenhouses so that plants grow bigger and faster, right? So my argument is that while there is a greening effect, we're seeing warmer winters, right? Like we're seeing more CO2 in the atmosphere. I don't think that it is bad, right? So like I think based on my research, I think that it's fine. And ultimately, like for sure, down the road, we need to find something because it's not unlimited CO2. Like fossil fuels are not unlimited, right? So I think we can electrify our grid with nuclear energy, like this next generation that's out. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's what
but
I was
I
going to
will
ask
say,
about. Yeah.
yeah, I support nuclear energy. I really do not like solar and wind, other than like if someone wants to do rooftop solar in like a very rural area or like on their home, like it's a free country. I don't like solar and wind on the grid because they're intermittent. They don't always run. And so I don't like them on the grid because it requires you to then build out the grid to cover up for that intermittency. So it makes it more costly for us. And so I don't think it has a place. Let's unleash nuclear, like unregulate nuclear. But going back to the fossil fuels thing, and we're not going off of fossil fuels anytime soon. We still need it for transportation. We need it for construction. We need it for fertilizer. We need it for concrete because that you can't. There's no 1-to-1 for nuclear. If we were to scale batteries, like if every car became an electric car and had really big batteries, that would have a really big problems of just like mining for the materials that those batteries require, the e-waste of those batteries. Like that's an environmental problem. And so when I look at 420 ppm in the atmosphere, I no longer don't fear CO2. I just think, so what? Like if you really strip away all of the media, all of the fear mongering, and you look at it objectively, I actually think in a world where we have more CO2 is better than less. And that is why people freak out. I mean, like the vilification of CO2 has been like the biggest like psyop to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but like objectively. Okay, this is also another thing I think is so interesting is that when plants perform photosynthesis, they have to have a stomata open on their leaf. Like remember this from like biology class, right? Like a pore essentially on their leaf, and they're like, and the longer that
Another great impression, by the way.
I mean, I'm full of impressions. So the leaf is like, you should clip that.
Yeah,
like,
we will. That's the reel. That's the Instagram reel right there.
Let the succulent.
Let the leaf. Yeah. So when the plant is performing photosynthesis, that stomata opens, and it's going to stay open until a CO2 molecule goes in. Then it can close, and the photosynthesis process can begin. While that stomata is open, it is evaporating water. So actually, why having more CO2 in the atmosphere is good is that plants don't have to have their stomata open as long, so they have a higher water holding capacity with this more CO2 because they have to keep their stomata open longer. Another fact that I absolutely love, and I had no idea about this, is that we've had warming periods like this in the past that the climate activist scientists have done everything in their I guess they've done everything in their will to erase these from the record. We had a medieval warm period from 1100 to 1300. Where there's records of grapes being grown in the UK, and it's when that's when the Vikings they colonized Greenland because this ice was so retreated they were able to
let me
grow
stop you there.
crops
I'm sorry, Lucy. You're saying that if the world gets any warmer, we're going to suffer Viking attacks. I don't think that's the correct. That's not the argument you think it is.
Yeah. And then also we had a warming period during the Roman period where you think of like when Jesus was born and like the peak of like Roman like empire was also a warm period. So historically, before the climate hysteria kicked off, we would call those periods climate optimum, because they were the optimal time for humans to be alive. We had longer growing periods. We could support complex systems in cities, which then could support art and philosophy and culture. And so, again, like I take issue with the entire premise that a warming period is something to be afraid of. Like, I think that I'm not worried about CO2 emissions. I think ultimately through research and development, we will have a replacement for it, maybe in our lifetimes, especially for electricity. But in regards to transportation, I think the internal combustion engine and the gas-powered cars are going to be around for a while, and also for flying and all these things. And I have my fear of CO2 has been erased, and so everyone else's should be too.
Very interesting. Let me ask really quick. I'm sorry. I just want to.
Yeah, go.
Anthony, real quick.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Lucy, have you ever read The Long Summer by Brian Fagan?
No.
You should read it. It's a little dated. It's from like 2004, maybe 2006, but it goes into the history of like climate change going back to our pre-civilization, like the period of our species. It's very interesting. I just read it. I'll include it in the show notes for listeners too. That might be one that would interest you.
Yeah, I love that. I love learning about history because I think when I was in the climate movement, my narrative was like going back to 1850 was all I thought about, right? And that's what the climate movement wants you. They want you to be stuck in this very short timeline, and like where it's like they can show you, dude, we've gone up and to the right. And the climate activist scientists like Michael Mann did this really dishonest hockey stick chart that like tried to remap what temperatures used to be and erased the medieval warm period from 1100 from it to get his goals. It's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Like
that seems like a through line for a more leftist activist template to lead with a reference point of the 1800s, Victorian era, Freud, hysteria, always looking back at that period as the era of subjugation and reference to how oppressed we are and all that stuff and how bad things are. Several weeks ago, I texted you. I was at my niece's science fair, and I sent you a picture of this really beautiful project. It was not my niece. My niece actually won out of 200 kids.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it was amazing.
Congrats to her.
It was yeah, it's amazing. But this other kid, he's a child. He had this beautiful setup showing just how cost inefficient solar and wind. Remember I sent you that?
yeah, I was so impressed.
Yeah. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is not only because I'm impressed with how younger generations are starting to pick this up, but also the other end of it is like the fear mongering and the anxiety that it is imposed on that generation, maybe even Gen Z. I don't know about like the new generation, but can you talk about that a bit? Like just from a broader view. And then also like the second part of my question is like, have you interacted a lot with these younger kids who have fallen into this anxious trap because of climate change?
I think it's really right. I think younger than us, the generation that's even like 10 years younger than us, Gen Z, mid-20s down and then down younger, they've been taught this stuff at such a more like level of extreme than we have, and they haven't lived long enough to see the predictions haven't come true. So they kind of live the base level of like nihilism, right? They just sort of say like, oh, well, the planet's burning, and they don't necessarily think about it every day, but it makes them depressed and anxious. So I did go to one climate march, and that's on my goals for this coming year is to do more of that, like interface with people face to face who have been captured by this ideology. And I think people think like no serious person thinks the world's going to end. No serious person thinks we can transition off fossil fuels tomorrow. But I'm like, a lot of people do. I mean, I was part of that mindset for many years, and I know it is very prevalent. And just a feeling of guilt and shame for living a modern life as a human in 2025, 2026, right? People just thinking, oh, I'm like this horrible person for filling up my car with gas, which to me is such a waste of like human capital to be feeling ashamed. It's not like you were chose to be born in the year 2000 or whatever it is. Like we can't choose when we're born. And I think we have a lot to be grateful for. And I think it's very popular right now to be nihilistic and to think the world's burning and we've got late stage capitalism and la la la. And I find it all to
utopia.
be very tired.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're this far away from the utopia. Just give me a little more taxes and a little more of your freedom. We'll be there. And so I think bringing back common sense is like so important for these kids in context. They just don't know how the world works. They don't know how lucky they are. They have no concept of their privilege. And I use that in like, not to say like a woke way, but like the amount of privileges we have in a modern civilization cannot be understated.
Well, the fact that you're not living in a yurt, swimming in your own, you know what, and don't have access to antibiotics. I mean, it's like, if you have the opposite of that, you're pretty freaking privileged. Yeah.
Spending all day just toiling away, right? Like every time I'm like dropping off one of my kids at school, I'm like, ugh. And then I'm like, wait, my life is like not hard.
Well,
I'm like,
actually,
I need a DoorDash. Like I gotta DoorDash my I have no groceries. My hand is hurting.
I'm gonna push back a little bit and say that if we were living in a yurt, that means we'd be on like the Eurasian steppe. And I do think like riding horses all day and hunting and conquering. I want to be part of the Mongol horde. Maybe the male urge to like
you
be
feel
a
so much
steppe
more
nomad.
alive.
I'd feel so much more alive. A shorter life,
know.
but a better life.
I agree with that. I sometimes look at my son who's 4. He's about to be 4 in a week, and he has so much energy. And I'm like, poor kid needs to be like out with the hunter-gatherers, like hunting. Like he needs to be like running behind the hunting like herd of men and like hiding in a bush during the hunting thing and like learning. Like instead he's just taking my pot and pan and a sword and hitting me in our kitchen. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like you're meant to be out, but you're domesticated.
You're describing the exact reason my wife does not want us to have
point
a boy.
taken.
No, I mean, this is
point taken. I just want a Tylenol or an antibiotic, at some point.
Right. Can we have all of like the adventure, but with modern medicine? I think is what we're all agreeing on, right? No,
and to be able to turn it on and off, right? Like you don't actually like think about the day when you wake up and you're like, I don't actually want to go collect wood for my food right now.
That is very, very true. That is a point worth sticking on for just an extra like 10 seconds and saying like people do look back on like, the medieval ages and like the roaring 20s and all that stuff, and they see the romantic parts. They don't see the horrible parts, of which there were very, very many because they didn't have fossil fuels, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So true.
No, but I do want to stick on this topic that Anthony was asking you about before we finish up here, because I think we are running a little short on time, but this is the part of your work that I think is arguably the most important, which is this anti-doomerism that you're doing. There's so much, like you said, there's so many of these kids online that for so many reasons think like, oh, the world's screwed, the world's on fire, climate change is going to burn down all of civilization, or we're going to get into a nuclear exchange. That one's maybe a little more reasonable. But there is a lot of doomerism. And so I'm wondering, like, I don't even know what I'm asking here, except for what is it like interacting with? Because you do go those you do those on the street interviews with those young people, and you get these amazing reactions from them where their like eyes light up.
I know, they're like, the planet's burning, and you're like, oh my God, you're really misinformed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in our, you guys definitely have talked about this. It's like in our society, we put a premium on like negativity to show that it's intelligence. And I think for me, a big part of before I spoke out, because I am very optimistic, and I actually like worked through this with my therapist, where I was like, I'm very optimistic about the future. I'm not doomerism. I feel this way. I feel that way. And she was like, that's great. Your voice and your perspective is valid. And I was giving up a lot of my power to like the smarter people in the room who were saying everything was doomed. And I think just that quiet practice of like, what is my actual take in this moment? Am I actually scared about this like war in Iran? Let's just like whatever. And I'm like, I'm not scared about it. I'm not going to worry about it. Like, I know that's outside my wheelhouse, but like, I just feel like for me, this whole year of making content has been a practice and going back to what is my discernment right here? Where do I stand on this? Am I afraid because other people are telling me to be afraid? Or am I afraid based on information? And I can say more than 99% of the time, once I calm myself down and become present with whatever the news is telling me or the headline, I will always realize that I don't have a reason to be afraid. And I think also like you can only control and really should only care about what is in your cone of influence.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people, especially the white women who we call the awfuls.
Who calls the awfuls?
Oh,
the affluent white females. Wait, what is it? Affluent white female liberals.
How is this the first time I'm hearing about this?
He sent me an article. You have to send it to you. Yep.
Oh my God,
it's
please.
Perfect.
That's that's my favorite thing I've heard in a long time.
I know. Affluent white female liberals. Their energy is so dispersed over the globe. They feel like the weight of the world is on their shoulders. They're trying to protect every immigrant, every displaced person, and all these things. And I see it over my newsfeed all the time. These dysregulated women who are confused of where their place is, and they're scrolling, and their nervous system and their energy is being hijacked by these technologies. And I feel like you said, a big part of my mission is not just the climate stuff. It's about modeling for women, like how to have discernment and how to have autonomy over your energy and be focused in your energy and what you try to change. Because ultimately I'm way more effective now in accomplishing what I want to accomplish in this world than when I was giving my energy up to the things I can't control.
Yeah, I mean, that's like
you're energy efficient. You're energy efficient.
Yeah, there you go. You're energy efficient. Yeah.
I have been saving my own energy.
You see, just tell them you want to be energy efficient? Be like me.
Look it, guys.
Forget the Xanax. Just breathe.
I think you're doing the Lord's work then, if you don't mind me saying, because there's definitely a lot of anxiety in the world, particularly among young women. It does seem. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
So that's why I think what you're doing is so important. Is like, listen, if the world really was, if the world really was like burning down or about to end, I'd get it. I would be like, be anxious. Like, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
Actually, at that point, I would say, don't be anxious because you might as well enjoy yourself because there's nothing we can do. But there actually is something we can do. And first of all, it's not nearly as bad like you've been pointing out. But also, and this is something we didn't talk about in this conversation. That's maybe a positive note to end on that I've heard you talk about before, which is we are innovators as a species. We are innovators. And you did kind of touch on this with like the dikes and the levees and things that actually we can technology our way out of a lot of problems, and not out of just out of problems, but into prosperity. And I just like, I think our society would only benefit from having that mindset that you're describing. Like, let's not be anxious. Let's be positive. Let's think, how can we make things better? How can we solve real problems? Because we can.
Problem solvers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, when I was in the climate movement, I remember people would say, oh, you think you can just innovate your way out of this?
Yes.
You can't do that. We can't innovate our way out of this. That's irresponsible and selfish. You want to have your cake and eat it too. And I would be like, okay, but like, we've kind of innovated our way out of everything. Like, we used to have like have horse and buggies, and there was manure everywhere in New York, guys, and now we have cars. Like, I just think that like
there's still a lot of manure in New York, actually,
because we've adopted the anti-human worldview. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like that is like actually policy decisions that if we came around, we would to get our way out of those. But I just think that optimism is like should become back into fashion.
Yeah, it's a permanent state of infancy. It's like, what are we going to do? No innovation. We need mommy and daddy to keep us coddled and safe from all the, raw environment. And it's ridiculous. Yeah. So I love what you're doing, and it definitely matters. And I'm so excited for your book. I can't wait.
Yeah.
For that. That is going to be
well,
so
it sounds
cool.
like you're 30 pages in. It sounds like we're going to have to wait.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to wait.
I have to be, you keep waiting for that. I know, I'm like writing, I'm like, wait, they let me write a book. It's like, is this really bad?
They.
Well,
but no, it'll be good. It'll be good. I think it'll be great because I think for me too, there's like certain there's certain topics where like now I can really dig down and go deep on them. I'm sure you guys feel the same way. It's like I have my things that I've done my deep dives on, and like sea level rise, like whatever, like
yes,
just writing a chapter on that, I can like look at the studies and I can see the discourse, and so I can really leave it. The idea is to leave the book era very like solid on all of this information, so I can do more of that interfacing with climate activists and people who don't agree with me, and debates and things like that, because I think I'm going to have to take it to the masses.
Yeah,
bring the optimism to the masses. That's what I want.
That's what I don't get. I'm like, what do you guys? I'm like, your end vision is so negative and my end vision is so positive. Like, which world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in the world that I'm presenting where we can solve our problems and fossil fuels are great and humans are really cool? Or your world where like we're all going to like die a slow death with like no energy choice and like basically socialism and like depressed?
Well, you're being awful optimistic, so you must be stupid, Lucy. That's the that's the logic.
Right. But these are the same people who also don't want to have kids. It's like like the self-defeatist thing. Like they don't want to have kids.
Oh,
so sad.
I hate that.
I will say, like, I know we're kind of like wrapping up, but like I do feel like the issue of our era, the thing that faces us in the West the most, because we've solved all of our physical comforts, is this psychological phase. And I think even for me, nothing has really changed in my life between when I was full of anxiety every day and fearful and too overwhelmed to act and today, other than my internal world. And now I see a life of opportunity and possibility. And I wake up every day so excited. And the only thing that changed was the information that I took in. And so I think we're fighting this psychological, and that's why I love your work, Anthony, because it's like this next frontier of human development is psychological. Because every woman right now who's freaking out on her algorithm could be someone who's building a life or involved in her community and running for the PTA board. But instead she's freaked out about whatever the new thing is of, cause du jour is.
Yeah. That's right.
Wasted human capital.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing the work to help to reclaim some of that, and it's not going unnoticed by us, that's for sure.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on, Lucy. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. And we'll catch you in the next one.
Yay.